The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the spooky expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one that most refer to as Shayn, and today for you guys, I'm bringing it back to the paranormal realm. After doing a handful of conspiracy-based episodes, I figured I should bring it back to a little bit more of the fun stuff, not as much of the heavy stuff. So today for you guys, digging into some local folklore, some local ghost stories and experiences that this individual has had while doing paranormal tours in the Charlotte area. But before we get into this one today, just a couple of quick news and updates. I'm trying to make this as quick as I can for you guys so we can get into the show. But first and foremost, of course, I am working on some new designs for the merch store. One of them is a Mothman design, another one is a Shadow Person design, and there may even be some more coming down the pipeline. So if it sounds like something you guys might be interested in, make sure you guys keep tabs over there on the merch stores and see when those drop. And I'm sure I'll be telling you guys on the show, but just something to look forward to. And also, I know I mentioned it again on the last couple episodes, but I'm going to keep mentioning it because it will be happening within the next couple weeks. Bizarre Inquiries will now be a YouTube live show. So with that being said, we'll give you guys an update on when that is going to happen exactly, so you guys can pop in and pop into the chats and have conversations while we're doing the show and all that. But with that also being said, if you guys have any articles, clips, or questions that you guys would like us to discuss on the show, or if there's any other podcasters that you guys would like to see us interact with on the show, we're all ears. We'd absolutely love to hear it. And also, that show will be now a 1 hour format instead of a 15-minute format. So if you're willing to come in and check out the live, it'll be not just 15 minutes and you guys are out. It'll be a full show. We'll give you guys a solid hour out of it, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Hoping that'll help that show grow a bit in this next coming year, and it'll also kind of bring in more community with all of you guys. So help me out, join the community, pop in on the Bizarre Inquiries live episodes. And if you guys are into live episodes, you guys can also go and check out the Patreon if you guys want to check out Inquiries All Reality or Bizarre Encounters live. That is something that is offered over on the Patreon along with premium live replays of the episodes. But that's all I really got for you guys before we get into the show. And just one last thing, just a quick message. This podcast has a strong focus on community engagement, so I encourage all listeners to share their own experiences and research on the show. That said, if anyone would like to be a guest on the show, or if anyone has an encounter or experience that they would like to share on the show, or possibly even have me investigate, please email me at inquiriesallrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys can get a hold of me through the hotline number, text, call, whatever's easy for you guys. And that number is 313-364-1551. And every single thing that I mention and everything that I will mention throughout the show is all available on the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the spookiness. Please welcome to the show, paranormal enthusiast Haley Addams. How's it going today?
I am great. How are you doing?
Not doing too bad. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We got connected through Instagram, and like most conversations, they seem to always start off through Instagram. So,
yeah. Thankful. I want to shout out the account Spooky Charlotte because they pointed me in your direction. So.
Yeah, he's been on this show and he's been on my other show, Bizarre Encounters. So he's kind of been a little bit around the gambit with me. But yeah, he's a good dude. I like that guy. He's definitely does really good job as far as his research goes with finding all these different stories, figuring out the whole backstory to like all the different graveyards and everything. Like, yeah, he does a lot of work for the community.
He really does. And it's amazing. Like anytime I get on Instagram, he is posting some fundraiser, some fun fact. I'm always like, where does he find the time, honestly? But yeah, it's great. Love what he does here in Charlotte.
Well, if he ended up pushing you over to me, I mean, I got to expect that it's going to be a good conversation then, because like I said, I assume he carries a good circle of people around him because he has one of those atmospheres where he kind of just draws in good people. So
yeah, I really hope so. Really hope I can live up to the hype here.
So I guess a good spot to start for anybody that may not be familiar with who you are, what you do exactly. Why don't you let them know a little bit about your background and a little bit about what you do exactly?
For sure. So I guess my background in the more paranormal realm of things is here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am a ghost tour guide, and it's a really unique, fun ghost tour. I'll go ahead, I'll shout them out. They're nightly spirits. You can find them in like 20 different cities across the US here. And what's fun about this tour is it is a haunted bar crawl. So not only are you getting fun ghost stories, fun history, you are also, getting to stop and drink, which is great most of the time.
Until somebody gets a little bit too hammered and then they start yelling at the spirits like, come at me.
It's happened, and I've been like, let's not do that. Most of the ghosts I deal with, at least now on the tour, they're more of the friendly variety. We did have a spot that we would go to for a long time that we ended up taking off the tour just because it was a time constraint. That place, though, is known to have a demon. So when people would get rowdy there, I would always be like, no, leave me out of that. No, thank you.
Especially with the alcohol too, because I know a lot of people theorize too. It's like you almost like open a doorway when you start drinking because you become loose. The doors get knocked down essentially. So it's just even more of an urge for a demon to come at somebody. If, they've been drinking, because that's just that much easier to get into their head.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's sort of what makes me an enthusiast, we'll say. I've had very few real life encounters. I say real life as if that tour isn't real life. It is, but I mean, outside of the tour, I've had a couple, and while they're small, they're pretty significant, which I think is what kind of pushed me to want to do this job here in the first place. And I've done like very minimal ghost hunting on my own. I want to do more. That could be like a New Year's resolution for me, is to go ghost hunt on my own some more. But I've been in the field, I guess we'll say, a little bit. I would like to dip my toes in there more, though, for sure.
Hey, at least you get to do the tours, though, because even if you don't necessarily get to do the investigations, at least you kind of get to be around the area. You get a feel for it. You still open yourself up for having some experiences, too, depending on, what exactly you do on the tour. Because I know some walk-in tours, they may just kind of go around the outside of the building. Some will let you come on to, like, the property, but maybe not enter. And then some will just straight up let you enter. So I guess kind of depends on what type of ghost tour you're doing. But even if you're viewing it from the street, I mean, it definitely open up the possibility of still, possibly seeing something in a window or something moving past, like, a doorway or something. So at least you're there.
Yeah. I think that's what's lucky about the fact that I do have the bar stops is I get to be in these stops for however long it takes to tell the story, and then for these people to finish their drinks. Like if they want to stand there and party for a little bit, I'm not going to be like, the school teacher being like, no, you got to keep it moving. I'm going to let them, do their thing. So that definitely gives me time to have something happen, and a few things have happened before, so it's very cool.
So just out of curiosity, do you do tours around Charlotte also, or are you like a neighboring city, or?
So it's in the city of Charlotte itself, technically the uptown area, which for non-natives to Charlotte, it's the silliest thing ever. We call our downtown uptown because the city's on a hill. But
So literal uptown.
Literal uptown, but it is the city. It's downtown. I'm not a native Charlottean. I don't even know what you call
Charlottean, something like that. I mean, they all sound accurate.
Yeah. So when I moved here, I was definitely like, oh, we're doing that? Okay.
So I definitely would love to dive into some of the places that you end up covering on your tour, because I always loved kind of hearing about the local folklore and everything. But before we get into that, of course, I want to dive into some of your personal experiences, since you said it kind of led way into you doing these tours. So I got to hear your personal ones first.
So there's one big one that happened. It was only a few years ago. So I've been doing the tour job. So I'll lead up to that one a little bit. First one, very minuscule, but it kind of expands time. So sort of bear with me here. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's where this like big one kind of happened. But I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. So I lived there for most of my life. And when I was in preschool, so we're going back far. I have this bizarre memory that I'm like, I wouldn't have made this up as like a 4-year-old child. So I'm in gym class. I have to go to the bathroom. My teacher is taking me to the bathroom, which is kind of a stretch from where the gym is to the restrooms. And, I'm just a happy little kid. I'm walking with my teacher, and I see these 2 nuns coming at us. Weird, because this was not a Catholic school. This was a Presbyterian school, still is. But I was raised Catholic. So little 4-year-old me sees nuns. I'm like, hey, nuns. Hi. I'm just like, hello. Scowl at me. Just mean mug me, essentially. Keep walking. I look at my teacher kind of like, they were mean. She has zero response. Like, she did not see these nuns. So bizarre. Flash forward like 20 years into the future, I get a job at this exact same preschool. I have not thought of this nun story like for all these years. I thought I was just a little kid with an overactive imagination. But as I start working there, some of the other teachers are like, yeah, it's haunted here. It's haunted. We see like ghosts. We see little kids when no kids are in the building, like in certain rooms, like things feel off. And I'm like, wait a minute. things are coming back. I definitely saw something weird here. So those 2 dots were kind of like connected, sort of. No one ever mentioned nuns. So that's still a very weird thing to me. But while I was there, as an adult who can fully remember things, there was one time I had my kids. This was like the after school program pretty much. And normally they just play. That's what the after school program is. Typically we take them out to the playground outside, but it was a rainy day or something. So we were in the play area in the basement. Now this is a church/school. The school is fairly new-ish, like probably 30 some years old at this point, maybe. Church is older, and the church has creepy tunnels in the basement that connect the play area to the basement of the church. Like, if that isn't a spine-chilling sentence in the first place.
Like an access tunnel or something, possibly?
Yeah, pretty much. Like,
or if there was a fire, you go down into the basement and then you could get up and out into the playground. So like maybe a fire escape too.
Yeah, exactly. That type of thing, which it's fine when the lights are on, but if the lights are off, it's very foreboding. It has a look to it. So I'm lining my kids up. My back is to the tunnel, which is dark. The kids are in front of me facing the tunnel, and the little boy in front of the line, he like looks around me. He goes, "Miss Haley, who's that man back there?" Just dead serious. I knew this kid well. I knew when he was kind of like pulling a fast one. This was a serious voice for him. So I'm just thinking, it's one of the custodians. So I kind of turn around. No one's there.
Of course not.
Of course not. So I was like, Owen, who are you looking at? He goes, that man. He's just so insistent, pointing at this guy that is not there. So I'm like, let's go upstairs. We quickly went upstairs after that. So like, yeah, things at that school were
Hold on tight, everyone. Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. But if you don't mind taking a second to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook, and Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok, I'd greatly appreciate it. And feel free to spark up a conversation. I love getting to know you guys. And now back to the show. Did you ever end up looking up the history of that school to see if it was something else before, or, I mean, maybe even the church itself, maybe something happened at the church where it could be something a little bit more residual, or I definitely have some theories on this, but I'm curious, like, what the background of the school may have been if you looked into it.
I know I definitely tried to look it up, and I could not find anything that would allude to it being haunted. Like, I don't really remember anything significant being there before the church was there, because, I mean, this is Ohio. There's not too much, like, old stuff hanging around.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of weird haunted stuff in Ohio. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
I think it's the makeup of the land, though, because it seems to always be a little bit more residual, where it kind of comes more into like the minerals and things in the ground.
Yeah. But no, I definitely tried to figure something out, and I just could not. So I would love to hear what your theories are on it.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, there's a lot of like a lot of the ancient burial grounds and everything in Ohio. I mean, there's all the earthworks, there's the giant burial mounds and everything. So, I mean, there is this like weird thing with the land to begin with, that there is some type of supernatural something to it that goes back to like the natives and everything. But I mean, assumably, since it was a church, though, there seems to be this. Talking about like residual hauntings, you know, it seems to be that everybody kind of gets on this schedule when they work for the church, you know, like nuns, they'll do the same thing every day. They'll go down this hallway every day. They'll do this every single day. And they kind of just get on the same regular routine. So it seems like with churches, there's always this haunted aspect to them. But I don't know if it's necessarily anything like, I mean, they're nuns, you know, I don't foresee them being like stuck in purgatory or being stuck in some area where they're still here. So I think it kind of comes down to more of a matter of like, one, what the church is built out of, if it's made out of certain different types of stone, what could potentially be in the land as far as minerals and everything like that go, like I said with Ohio. But I think it's a matter of it being a residual haunting with these churches, that, you know, it's just people doing the same things all the time. It just becomes engraved into like the land itself. So, you know, seeing these nuns, I don't think that they're like conscious spirits. I think it's just a matter of like things that have happened so many times in that point. And I've even said either one, it could be caused by that, or it could be a matter of having so much of an emotion happen in that area, where most people would talk about the aspect of like, you know, something really bad happening, something really traumatic happening in the area. But I've been kind of on this theory lately that I don't think it necessarily has to be that, but it can also be just really, really strong emotions, either negative or positive, because my argument for this is usually like when you hear like saloon music, like I don't think that it's necessarily that anything evil or bad happened there. It's just that so many people had a good time there that it ended up making this like energy deposit in that area of just all this really, really strong emotion. So if people are working in a church, obviously they have this like profound love for God, where they basically, you know, they give up their life to, you know, work for be working for God, essentially. So, I mean, they definitely have some very, very strong emotions for the things that they're doing. And even if it's like, you know, a lot of churches will do charity, and people feel really, really strong emotionally about doing charity work too. So I think that could also cause an effect in it. No matter what way, I definitely think it's something residual. But whether it's a matter of just something happening so many times, or there being such an impact of energy in this area that it kind of creates something in this spot. That's kind of what I throw it to, especially with churches though, because I don't see a nun just lingering around unless there's like some kind of unfinished business. But like, I feel like that's very few and far in between, considering how many people talk about paranormal experiences at churches with nuns. Like, it can't be that many of them. Like, there's got to be a residual factor to it, you know?
Yeah. And that definitely makes me feel better about them snubbing me if it was something residual. Just didn't even realize I was there.
And I mean, especially with the kids too, since you mentioned that you saw this as a kid, but you didn't see it when you got older, they seem to just be a little bit more like attuned to something. Like, you know, they see colors a little bit differently than we do. Like, they bring in stuff a little bit differently than we do, because they haven't had their like, you know, sensory factors being like squashed yet by just like Earth and everything. Like,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I definitely think that plays a factor in it too, that these kids were possibly seeing something because they're a little bit closer to that veil, or they just have like a different spectrum of like what they can see or even hear. I mean, that with kids that they can hear higher frequencies than like normal people can. So I definitely feel like there's probably a factor that plays into vision with that too. And I mean, it's kind of interesting on your aspect to be on kind of both sides of it, where, you've seen these things as a kid, and then on the other side, you've had experiences with somebody like dead staring at it saying there it is, and you going, there's nothing there. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah, for sure. It was a time working there, like just random weird things that I like can't even think of off the top of my head. Just a lot of stuff. Very, very interesting.
Did you end up seeing anything when you got older out of curiosity there? Or was it more so like the kids saw stuff and told you about it, or like you heard stuff? Like, did you get any visuals when you were older?
I did not. Like, I would think that I saw shadows sometimes, but again, this was a school with a lot of staff. Like, a lot of that could just be written off. One thing I did see, however, and again, this was in the basement play area, we had like, a crate of just rubber bouncy balls, the big ones that you can like toss, and then they're not very heavy, but they're like a substantial rubber. They're not
like
just
the dodgeballs. Is that what you're talking about?
A dodgeball, but less aggressive.
Those ones with like foam,
but full of air. It's hard to describe. I think other school teachers,
non-aggressive dodgeballs. We can just call it that.
Yeah, just kind of smooth rubber, not gonna leave a bruise though if they are thrown. So we had a bin full of those, and this was actually during lunch. Some of the kids would eat lunch down there. I hear just the loudest pop. And I'm like looking around, I'm like, are the kids okay? Like, what the heck was that? And then I see laying out of the ball basket like an empty, deflated ball husk. Those should not pop. They were not that full of air at all. They constantly needed air. It was not overfilled. It looked like it had like a slash through it, but no one was around there. That I still cannot explain, and how it wound up then outside the basket when no one was around it. That's like the one thing I can claim to have seen. But other than that, yeah, it was just kind of everybody else being like, oh, this, and this, or the kids kind of like,
I mean, it could be a mix of both. I mean, it could be residual, and there could be some intelligent haunting to it too. Because, if you mentioned the kid, for example, mentioned that you saw like an older man, like a janitor, and that might be a little bit of a different story, especially one that's based around like a school. Like, you never know, especially back in the day, what type of like thoughts people could possibly have. So, without reading between the lines here, of course, with like janitors maybe possibly developing some type of like obsession with some of the kids. Like, if anything did happen to them, like them having a heart attack at home or something like that, they may still linger around the school like unfinished business because they want to keep an eye on whatever the person is that may have interest them, or even just kids in general. Because again, you never know, especially back in the day, because they didn't look into stuff as much as they do now. So, I mean, it could be two aspects to it, that's intelligent and it's residual. But
definitely, yeah.
If it played into the janitor thing, though, I mean, that could potentially be what the slash may have been on the ball. I mean, it could have been something that, like a screwdriver or something like that the janitor would have had. So
yeah, definitely something. I wish I could look into it more, but I don't think that they would like if I called them up and was like, hey, it's me. It's been a minute. If you had any more spooky things going on, they'd be like, don't talk about that.
Can I come and investigate it? Would that be possible? Can I just get the keys around like midnight or so? I'll leave by like 4 a.m. I just got to be around for the witching hour.
I would always, if we had like staff meetings that we had to come to after hours, I would always get there like a little bit early so I could like just poke around the creepy tunnels and stuff. I never found anything, but I really wanted to.
I mean, maybe one day, maybe you end up going back to Ohio or something. Like I said, maybe if you just ask them, or maybe one day the building will be abandoned and you'll actually get a chance to fully do an investigation.
I have dibs if that ever happens. I don't foresee it happening. I think they're doing pretty well, which happy for them, but maybe in the very far future.
So, like, having these experiences, is this what ended up leading you to end up getting into, like, the paranormal stuff where you wanted to start doing paranormal tours? Or, like, how exactly did you go from, you know, working at the school to getting to a point where you wanted to get to become, or you wanted to become, like, a paranormal tour guide and investigator?
So I've always just kind of been interested in this stuff. Like, honestly, I used to be a giant weenie, and I would kind of like read these ghost stories, freak myself out. Like, I couldn't go back to them. But then like a month later, I'd be like, okay, I want to read some more ghost stories again. And then like a switch just flipped one year, and I was not a weenie anymore, we shall say. And I got really into this stuff. But while I was in Ohio, there was just kind of no opportunity for that. We really didn't have ghost tours or anything like that there. Then my parents were going to move to Charlotte, and the weather here is much better than Ohio. So I was like, me too. I'm also coming. I was like, I need a new job. It was kind of like the height of the pandemic. I really did not want to get back into preschool with all of that going on, just miserable. I was like, I'm ready for a change. I would love to do something kind of spooky, but I don't really foresee that being a realistic thing. So I'm just scrolling on Indeed one day, and I just, for giggles, I type in like ghosts, and up pops, you know, this ghost tour here. So I applied to that so fast. Now here I am. But I'll tell you, before I get into what happens on the ghost tour, I will tell you my one non-tour related story. So this happened at the house my grandparents used to live at, you know, suburbs of Philadelphia. And I
one from each state.
Yeah.
You got Ohio, got Pennsylvania, and then we're going to get into North Carolina.
Yep. Got one from each place I've lived in. So my grandparents' house, beautiful ranch house, fairly new. I say that it was probably built in like the 90s. I have no concept of time, but you know, it wasn't built in like the 1800s. All the times I would visit as a child, like nothing really seemed too off. But again, like I said, I was always a weenie, so any little bump had me running scared. And then as I got over that and started getting more into this stuff, like I would notice kind of weird things at their house. I'm like, I can't explain this. This is kind of weird, but I'm going to keep that to myself because everybody kind of knows me as the girl who will go cry ghost for any little thing. And I'm like, I don't want that reputation. So I'm going to not tell anybody I was hearing this bump or whatever was going on. But then it started to get unignorable at their house. I have since learned, I think the catalyst for all of this, before my grandparents moved in, this woman did pass away in the house. Nothing malicious. I think she was sick and she died peacefully with her husband by her side, and then he sold the house to my grandparents. No one told me this, however. I went my whole life.
She must have really loved that house.
I went my whole life not knowing somebody had passed away in this house. So that kind of explained a few things for me as to why I would maybe hear just random bumps or kind of like feel like someone was staring at me. However, I don't really know how much I want to say in case my family does end up listening to this podcast, which I would love if they would do. But also I'm like, oh God, please don't. You're not going to really like that I'm telling this story. So more recently, within like the last 15 years, 2 other people have passed away in that house. I will tell you that one of them was my uncle. He was in a wheelchair his whole life. You know, we saw his death coming. We were kind of prepared for that. The other one, I'm gonna leave that one anonymous if that's all right. We'll just say 2 more people have passed away on that property. So that brings the grand total to 3. So after my uncle passed away, the stuff kind of kicked up like a little bit, especially surrounding his passing. I think that was more just people coming to kind of like guide him along. And then the activity sort of just stopped, went more back to normal. And then we had the other passing, and then things kind of ramps back up again. So my big moment of being like, this place is haunted was, I want to say it was about like 3 or 4 summers ago at this point. I had a room I would always sleep in, and I would always hear something. Something would always wake me up. One time there was a dragging sound that kind of just went through the room. That one really creeped me out. Usually it would just be like a knock on the wall, something like that. The dragging sound I could not get past. And then when this experience happened, I'm like, everything makes so much sense. So I always have a hard time sleeping when I travel. That's just kind of how I am. So I'm kind of up, I'm restless. I finally fall asleep. Not sure how much time passes. I hear a really loud bang, like louder than the normal knocks you would hear. So I kind of like sit up, I look around. I'm like, it's par for the course, going back to sleep. I don't know how much time passes. I then wake up because I hear what sounds like metal hitting the floor, like not like anything big. Like I wake up and think, oh no, my rings fell off of the nightstand, which makes no sense because the nightstand was clear across the room. My rings were smack in the middle of it.
Half asleep logic.
Exactly. I'm like half asleep. I'm like, oh, somehow they flew off.
It makes sense.
So I get up, I check, my rings are exactly where I left them. So again, I just go back to sleep. I'm like, I probably imagined that, but it was just such a distinct sound of metal kind of tinking against the wood floor. So nothing else happens that night. The next morning, my mom comes in to make sure like I'm up and ready to go. And she stops and she kind of looks at the floor. She goes, what are you doing? Like, you're neater than this. Why did you throw your change on the floor? And I Dracula'd myself out of that bed. I was like, huh?
Then it registered.
Yeah, I was like, say that again? There's coins on the floor. She's like, yeah, there are 2 quarters sitting on the floor. I said, you don't understand. I heard that hit the floor in the middle of the night. I covered all of my bases here. I was like, there definitely weren't coins on the bed. I would have kicked them off while I was still awake. But I was like, just in case, I'm going to go ask my grandparents if they left coins on that bed, 'cause maybe that could happen. They said they absolutely did not. Why would they do that? That would be super weird. So I'm like, yeah, that would be super weird. You're right. These coins just materialized completely out of nowhere. I still have them to this day. I will not spend them. They sit on my dresser in my room. They just out of nowhere. But that was not even the only thing that happened this weekend that we were there. So the next night, I'm hoping for like $1 bill this night.
Or 20, fresh 100.
So can we up the ante? So around, I want to say like 1 a.m., my mom comes like banging into the room, scares me out of my sleep. I'm like, what's going on? She goes, are you okay? I'm like, I've been asleep in here. Thank you so much. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm fine. She goes, we heard a really loud bang. And I'm like, yeah, that's what happens in this house. She goes, okay, good night. And then leaves. So the next morning, I'm like, hey, what was that about? She goes, before she came in to see if that was me up to no good, she says that it sounded like something was thrown at the door of the room that she and my dad were in, like that hit the door and then kind of fell. So they got up, they looked all around the house, no explanation whatsoever. But what gets interesting for me is that same morning, my grandpa, he kind of pulls my dad aside, and he's not really one to admit to anything strange. He says to my dad, were you guys knocking on our door at 6 a.m.? Were you trying to wake us up? My dad was like, no, we wouldn't do that. My grandpa just goes, huh, okay. And just continues on his merry way. I'm like, that's just so bizarre. So much stuff happened that weekend. I'm not sure if it was this same weekend or not, but my dad had his name called in the kitchen at around 6 a.m., I want to say. Like, clear as day, he and my mom both heard it, both of them at the same time. My mom has had her name called in that house before as well. So just balls to the wall kind of activity this one specific weekend. I don't even know why. But we left. We go back to, this was still Ohio. We go back to Ohio. My dad calls to be like, hey, we made it home safe. My grandma's like, so weird. After you left, I went to make the bed in your room and the radio started playing. It's just like crazy stuff going on. That's the most activity I've ever seen there.
Hold on tight, guys. We have to take a break and pay some bills. But if you guys don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You guys can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. And it's a great way to support this show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts, live access to episodes, or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits with 7-day free trials available. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
The last time I ever stayed at that house, I heard footsteps approach the door of my room, and they had all wood floor, and there was kind of a lamp out in the hall, so I could kind of see the shadow of the feet on the outside of the door. And like I said earlier, I don't sleep well when I travel. I just wanted to go to bed. So I kind of just said no. They turned around, they walked away. Not kidding. Don't know why anyone would just come stand outside of my room if they didn't want something. Like if it was one of my family members, they would have just come in.
Somebody wanted your guys' attention. That time he was just like, you're like, no. And he's just like, okay, sorry.
All right, yeah.
All right, maybe next time.
So strange. But they do not live in that house anymore, which pains me. Because one, it's a beautiful house and they really, really loved it. And they're kind of sad not being there anymore. And two, I'm like, so much ghost activity.
I'm curious if the people that are living there now are still having some activity. Like, even just out of some weirdness, you should just hit them up. Be like, hey, my grandparents used to live in this house. Yeah. Have you ever seen a ghost there? Like, just either they'll reply or they'll completely ignore you. But either way, I mean, you'll know.
I definitely, I want to. But also, I kind of have a theory, and I don't think this is a theory I'm ever going to figure out. I think the activity is going to go with my grandparents. Aside from the original owner of that house, I think the other two would definitely follow them. I haven't heard about anything going on in their new place. It's just kind of like an apartment type place. Definitely kind of less space for things to get to. Weird, but also you would definitely notice if something super weird was going on there. I
mean, you may also not necessarily notice bumps and stuff like that because you might just end up thinking it's your neighbor. So it might kind of just blend in with the regular apartment noise unless you're actually seeing something, you know?
Yeah.
But you mentioned 6 a.m. for a couple of those. Did anybody pass that you know of around 6 a.m.? I know there's the anonymous one, your uncle, and then the other person. But have you heard any word about one of them happening around 6 a.m.?
The only one I don't know is the original woman. I don't know when she passed away. The other two I know definitely were not 6 a.m. So could be her. It was when my mother got her name called, she said it was a woman's voice, I believe is what she said. She thought it was my grandma, but that was 3 a.m. And
that's the witching hour anyways, though. So, I mean, it's just all out at that point.
Exactly. So maybe that's her with the 6 a.m. nonsense. I'm not sure. But yeah, it is weird that.
Or she got up every single day at 6 a.m. I don't know if maybe your uncle or even the other family member, if it is a family member, if there was just a reoccurring thing that they would get up at 6 a.m. every day, that could also play into it, that it's just that repeating schedule of everybody wake up at 6 a.m. Let's go.
What? Yeah, my theory about my uncle. So he was in the wheelchair, like I said, and he couldn't do anything for himself, basically. So he really wasn't doing much of anything. So I kind of think now He's like, look at everything I can do.
6 a.m. Everybody get up. I can walk. Let's go.
Wake up. Life's good. Life's good. We're up. We're happy. So that's definitely a possibility, I think.
Say maybe at some point they'll end up moving to like a normal like house again out of an apartment, and maybe, you know, it'll come back. Or, I mean, even with the apartment, you said that you made it sound like they moved there relatively recently, and it seems like sometimes with this like ghostly activity, it almost kind of needs a little bit of time to like settle in. So, I mean, maybe something will start back up in a couple months, like, because it seems to go in pockets too a lot of the time, that even if it's like a super active house, it'll be like really, really active for a month, then something won't happen for a year, and then it'll be really active for a couple months, and then there'll be absolutely nothing again. So, I mean, it goes in cycles, it seems like.
And that is definitely how it seemed to be. Because like I would have times I would say there nothing would happen outside of like a little tap that maybe I could write off as something else. And then we had like that weekend where it was just everything was going on.
I mean, it may even be a particular item too, because, you know, if it is an intelligent haunting, you hear about them, it's trying to attach themselves to specific things like locations, houses. But if family travels, you know, they might try to attach themselves to either somebody in that family or maybe like an object that's like was an important object to them during life. So, I mean, even if they moved into this new house, you know, maybe there was something that was, you know, your uncle's, for example, that they didn't bring, that may have been that special item that helped them keep that connection. And it's not that, you know, it's gone, but maybe it's like in storage somewhere. And maybe, you know, the storage facility is having some weird ghostly experiences. Like,
yeah, they had to get rid of a lot of stuff, but they kept like anything that would be super important that would kind of have something. Maybe.
So cross your fingers, it just cycles.
Yeah.
And it is your uncle and not something else.
Yeah. No, they are so very, very Catholic, crosses everywhere. I don't think it would even be possible for like an evil entity to worm its way in. I think they kind of took care of that.
I mean, maybe that's part of the reason why it's not necessarily happening too, because I know that like a lot of people that are in that mindset, they don't want any ghostly stuff because it's all looked at as bad regardless. So, you know, maybe it's also a matter of they're interacting because you guys were there, but you know, your grandpa's mentioning that, you know, I heard somebody knock on the door and and just kind of ignored it. Yeah. That might be the viewpoint on it. Maybe there is stuff happening at this house, but his viewpoint is like, that was weird. Okay. And then he just doesn't think about it again.
That could be with him for sure. But my grandma, she does like she believes in signs. She says she has dreams where these people visit her like all the time. I don't know if just like in casual phone conversation, she would be like, yeah, this pot was moving across the kitchen table. But I think things definitely could be happening, and she could be like, "Yep, no, this is who it is. I know that." So, yeah. But my
you got to trick her into a conversation about it.
Yes, yeah.
You know what's really interesting? Weird stuff. Speaking of weird stuff, have you ever had anything weird happen to you recently?
I do think it's funny that she is kind of more open to that stuff, and then my grandma on my mom's side, they're not Catholic. Like religious, but not Catholic. She had like one psychic experience in her life, freaked her out so badly. She like vehemently prayed for it to go away, and just nothing ever happened to her ever again. So I kind of think it's funny because you would expect the opposite to be true. Like the less religious one would kind of be into it. But yeah, she did not want that. She wanted no parts of it.
Hey, once you actually have the experience, you have to accept it into reality. So, like, if you just, again, pretend like it never happened, or you just pray it away like it never happened, like, I mean, it doesn't mean that other stuff may not be happening. It's just a matter of, like, you're aware that it happened the first time, so now you can be actively ignoring it the second time.
Yeah. I'm like, you should have kept that, because I think the story was my uncle, someone stole his textbook. He didn't know who it was. And my grandma was just like laying in bed, and like she sees the name of one of my uncle's classmates. It just like, I think she said it like just floated in front of her. She goes and she tells him it's this kid. It was that kid. I'm like, why wouldn't you want that though? That's really cool.
That sounds
to me.
super cool. It's not like you had some like demonic creature show his face and say like, you know, somebody's gonna die in a week. Like, like I would understand against that, but
yeah.
If you're getting premonitions that are helpful or interesting, like why not?
Yeah. Like I can respect that she probably got super bugged out balls. I'm like, could that not have transferred to me?
It's like one extreme or the other. Either one, you're going to be horrified of it and never want to talk about it again. Or on the other side, you're going to question it, and then it's going to lead you down a life of like always being interested in this type of stuff because you have to try to figure out what happened. Like you have this subconscious question that you need to answer. So it never seems like there's a middle ground. It's either like you're all in or I saw nothing, I'm all out.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's like my one big thing.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot to it. I mean, I wish you could find a way to get back into that house or, like I said, even contact the people. Like, I'm honestly curious if they have anything going on or, again, if something's going to pop up with your grandparents in a couple months.
Yeah, I'm very curious.
So, kind of getting into Charlotte and some of the stuff places that you cover on the tour, and maybe even some of the experiences that you've had on the tour. I don't know exactly where you want to start. I don't know if it's easier to kind of start in the order you would do the tour, but I'd love to hear about some of the history of your now to be town, not your hometown, but now to be town.
So it kind of surprises people when they learn that Charlotte even has ghost tours in the first place. We have like 5 different ones aside from the one I do. It's a fairly historical and fairly kind of creepy place. It just doesn't look like it because I don't know like what you know about Charlotte, but everyone is moving here. Like I kind of want it to stop.
Up and coming.
To say the least. So everything is just new, just bulldozing old things to make like big skyscrapers to kind of accommodate for everyone. So it doesn't look like an old city, but it goes back pretty far. So everybody's always like, oh, cool. Like I had no idea about any of this. So I guess I'll start, where I start the tour. It's at a place called the Dunhill Hotel. You can stay there. It's kind of like a boutique hotel. It's a tiny place. I think they only have like 100 rooms, but pretty fascinating history there. So it started out as a hotel. It was built in like 1929, right before the stock market crash. But that didn't seem to affect the hotel other than the fact that a lot of people came there then to commit suicide because of the stock market crash. They had no money. So many deaths happened there for that reason. We don't even know the exact number because the hotel at the time, they were like, we don't want people knowing this. We don't want that reputation. Like, we got to hide it. So we think there were maybe around 30 suicides, which is a lot. I always like to say,
if they're trying to hide it, it's probably like 60 because usually you got to like half whatever. If somebody plays trying to hide, I usually double the number, and that's usually a little bit closer where it is. Maybe like 50.
Yeah. I would believe like any number between 30 and 200. So they have that sort of dark history, and then the hotel, it started to just decline. Then they finally closed down in the 80s. I believe 1980 exactly is when they closed down, and they were shut down for 8 years because nobody wanted the place. It had a horrible reputation. So it was sitting empty. So a lot of squatters moved in at that time because, of course, nobody's using this hotel. Why shouldn't they?
Did it have like an urban name at that time? Because, some places when everybody moves out or it has this like bad vibe over it, it gets things like Hell Hotel or anything like that. Like, did it end up developing any type of like, local legend type name?
I wish.
That would have been cool.
Honestly, it would have been cool, but no. Unfortunately, it did not have anything cool like that. No, because again, the squatters were trying to hide that they were squatting there, and nobody really paid attention to them anyway, which was probably great for them. But no records were kept with the squatters there. So what was actually going on in that hotel, we've got zero clue. Like, that could have majorly added to the death toll. But when I'm on the tour, I always like to joke, it was like summer camp. Everybody got along just fine. It was great because I talk about macabre things all night, like to kind of keep the energy up a little bit. So I'm going to say, it was all fine. It was all good.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back. But just a quick reminder, if you'd like to rock some gear for one of your favorite podcasts, creatures, or topics, hop on over to the Open Minds Media store on Etsy and Printify for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. welcome back to the show. Now let's dive right in. I mean, homeless people in a hotel, you got to expect that there's probably going to be a lot of overdoses and stuff there. And then the bodies and whatever is just going to get completely covered up where, like, you know, even the police won't necessarily know about it because you don't want to report that there's a dead body in the hotel because otherwise they're going to come in and they're going to kick everybody else out. So, yeah, there's probably a lot of cover-up deaths in that hotel during that period from, like I said, from overdoses, things like that.
Yeah. Which kind of leads to, I call him the main character of the story of the Dunhill. So in 1988, new owners bought it and they were the ones that were going to turn it into the Dunhill. So of course they get all the squatters out. I guess squatters' rights did not apply. I don't really know how that works in the first place.
You just hose them all down. They'll leave, I guess.
Yeah.
I own this building and I own this hose. So I don't know what else to tell you here.
You're going to get out. But one person never actually got the chance to get out. So the crew, they were working one day and they go to get the elevators up and working and they look down in the bottom of the elevator shaft. Now, there are conflicting stories, but the one I heard the most is they found a full human skeleton down there. Some people say it was just a skull, but I've heard full skeleton the most, so that's what I go with. Now, I always like to say, most people, that's going to be a little bit freaky if you have just found human bones while you're just doing your very normal construction job. But these guys think this is like the coolest thing ever. They're calling everybody over. They end up calling the newspaper, which that is newsworthy. I would like to know, when bones are being found.
It's a bunch of guys. You got to expect that they're going to be like, "Ooh, that's interesting." Yep. Especially considering as construction workers, it seems like they come across a lot of weird stuff more often than people think that they do. Yeah. So they come across skeletons and they're just like, okay, cool.
Yeah, great. But what one of them did, which is like, maybe don't do this. When the paper got there, he just yanked the skull up and was just walking around posing with it like he's Hamlet or something.
To be or not to be? Take a picture of me. This is the newspaper, sir, not the news.
Like, please put the skull back where you found it. Now, this poor skeleton, we just found out, I want to say it was only last year, maybe like a year and a half ago. That is when we finally found out who this skeleton actually was. All of these years, the hotel staff have just been calling his spirit Dusty because his skeleton, it was found in a pile of dust.
Dusty Bones? I mean...
This is awful. Like, I get that Dusty's an actual nickname, but when you think about the origin there, it's like, we couldn't have done better with that. But thankfully...
Makes him sound like a janitor or something.
Thankfully, whenever this was a year or so ago, somebody in town that does kind of, I think, like philanthropic things like this, she was like, wait, let's actually solve this mystery. We have the technology now. Let's get these bones exhumed. Let's do a DNA test. So now we know that Dusty's real name is Oliver Mundy. He was a World War II vet, and he lived in Mooresville, which is like an hour away from the city of Charlotte, give or take. But sadly, after the war, he was homeless and he was known to kind of hang out around the hotel, which wasn't quite the squatter's paradise at that point, but it also wasn't a great place to be anyway. You could probably get a really cheap room at that point in time. So he wound up somehow in the bottom of the elevator shaft sometime between like 1946 and 1988 when he was found. That we still don't know exactly, which is... Maybe
he got in there and decided that, hey, look, a free little area. I wonder why nobody's sleeping here. And then little did he know, the elevator comes all the way down.
I've never even thought about that. That's a good theory because a lot of people, they like to make it like super morbid. They're like, oh, someone pushed him. It was murder. There was a legend for a long time that he was blind and just fell. It's like, how would you even know that in the first place?
I feel like it'd be more probable that if he was a homeless guy, they just kind of hung out around the area. Maybe like somebody left like the base or the garage, or not garage door, but like one of the back doors open or some access point into the basement. And he just ended up wandering down there saying, oh, look, here's a dark, warm spot that I can take a nap for a while. And then, like I said, the elevator probably came down a little bit too far. He probably didn't realize it was a elevator shaft, because if you're trying to sneak into a place, you're not walking around with a flashlight. Or if this was even going back to the 1940s, I mean, this guy could have just been kind of feeling around the dark and just went, okay, this place seems out of sight, and then took a nap and then never ended up waking back up because he got smashed by an elevator because somebody came all the way down. I mean, he could have even have sat there for an hour or two because, I mean, there, it's the basement. Like, there may not have been somebody that came down there that regularly.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm definitely going to introduce this theory into my storytelling because everybody's always like, well, how did this happen? And I'm like, could be many different things. So, yeah, poor guy. He was down there for who knows how long. And another thing people on the tour always like to say, sometimes you get people who just want to poke holes in every single story, and I'm like, just have fun.
You paid for this tour. You want to ruin your fun? That's on you, man.
They're always like, how come nobody smelled that down there? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. People did not smell that good back in the day. Probably
like I said, if this was underneath like an elevator shaft and everything too, it's like people weren't coming down there that regularly. And if they did come all the way down there, the doors are shutting, like it may not be as accessible as you think it is. Or, maybe people did smell it for a while and they were like, oh, maybe like a squirrel or something crawled in somewhere and died. Like
Exactly. Yeah. There could be many explanations for that.
Or if it was during the homeless time. Again, you don't want to report this stuff because as soon as you report that there's a dead body in the hotel, they're going to come in and kick everybody out. So you just keep it quiet if somebody dies in the hotel.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that he could have died during that time period in the 80s. I kind of think it was earlier than that just because the reports are he was just totally skeletal. And if he was a more recent death, so gross, but there would have been like a lot more on him. But also,
rats?
It's a city basement. Exactly. Rats will take care of that. So, yeah, if it was during the time that just squatters were there, nobody was going to report a weird smell in the basement. No.
I mean, the rats may have even eaten it before it got too bad of a rotting, bloating smell to it. Because, I mean, if somebody dies and that's food access and there's a bunch of rats down there, they might eat it in the first couple days because usually that smell doesn't start until the body starts to bloat. It's not like the first couple days that the body really smells that bad. So it may have already been gone by the time it would have smelled.
For sure. And I have seen rats down there and they get big. I think they're cute, luckily, but also the thought of them, feasting on your dead body, that's not great.
Food is food, I guess, They are scavengers. They'll eat whatever's available. And if there's a giant portion of meat just sitting there, they're going to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is. If it was a person, a dog, a cat, food is food.
Yeah, they're going to be like, oh, sign me up. It's a feast in here, fellas. Yeah, poor Dusty. So clearly he's hanging around the Dunhill there, but surprisingly, he's not a vengeful ghost. I think I personally would be if this is how I met my end, but he's just very much a trickster. He messes with the elevators, obviously. And there is a specific room, which leads me to think that maybe he was a long-term tenant when it was super cheap, rentable rooms. Room 906 is the super creepy room. That's the one that you're almost guaranteed to have some kind of experience in. And I will tell you a story from one of our other guides who just recently joined us. His name's Tyler. I hope he doesn't mind me telling this story, but
shout out to Tyler.
Shout out to Tyler. He tells it on the tour, so I have to assume he's okay with people knowing about it. So before he even took the job, he and some buddies, they knew about room 906. They wanted to spend the night in that room, do some ghost hunting. So they all go in on the room. They're there for a little bit. I think they say they go out to dinner because really nothing was happening in the room so far. They come back. They try to do a bit more ghost hunting. Really nothing's happening. They call it an early night. I think there's 4 of them total, maybe only 3, but Tyler is sharing a bed with his friend. And he's just kind of on his side. He's on his phone, waiting to go to sleep. But his friend is just sitting ramrod straight against the headboard. He's not on his phone. He's not watching TV. He's just sitting up in bed. So eventually Tyler's like, this is weird. What are you doing? And this guy's just saying I'm hot. I'm really hot. That's all he would say. And Tyler said he could feel the heat coming off of him, but it was not that hot in the room. So eventually he rolls over. He's like, do you need to go to the hospital? Like, what's going on? And his friend is sitting up straight, but his head is like completely turned, looking out the window. And right next to the window is a mirror that looks into the bathroom. So Tyler's just trying to figure out what he's looking at. He looks into the mirror and he sees a shadow figure standing in the doorway of the bathroom, just kind of staring at the room. So Tyler wakes everyone up. He gets this friend kind of out of his trance. They left. They did not spend the night there, which I'm like, you guys must have been really freaked out because that's not the cheapest hotel in the city. Like, I'm surprised you forfeited that money. They got out of there. He said they left the parking garage at exactly 3 a.m., which just freaked them out even more.
Trying to get you out before all the real activity starts.
Yeah, you're like, you think this is bad? You better leave now. But yeah, people that stay in that room, they say it feels like somebody stares at them while they sleep. People say the TV turns on and off. They even say the sink in the bathroom turns itself on and off, which that to me is just so much harder to explain than electrical things.
Yeah.
So that takes some manpower. I've also heard people say they will hear running on the roof because that's basically the top floor. I think there's just suites above that. And that specific one, I do not think there's a suite above. So they'll hear like footsteps on the roof, just like running full speed. So that's the spookiest room. Something could happen in any of them, but that's kind of the one that's almost guaranteed to have something happen. But I think Tyler is kind of a dusty magnet. So I've had two, I like to say, personal experiences with Dusty. They've been in the same room in the hotel. So where I like to do the tour is there's a bar area. Sorry, my cat's meowing if you can hear that.
Yeah, I was going to say, usually I got a bunch running around too. So I had two that were fighting behind my monitor last night, and you can hear them on the recording. So
that's cute, at least. But yeah, I like to snag this kind of just front room next to the bar. It's just like about, I want to say 20 feet deep, just has enough seating in it to fit everyone. So the reason I say I think Tyler is a dusty magnet is the night I was training him, we're in this room, I'm standing where I usually stand, and there's a TV on the wall because people like can sit in there, drink a drink, watch whatever games on the TV. Sometimes the TV's on, sometimes it's off. I just mute it if it is on, but it was definitely off this night. I'm telling my story, and I see people kind of start to look at the TV, which is normal if it is on, like, that's fine. Look at the TV. But I knew it was off, so I turn. It's now on an info screen. So I'm like, that's a little bit strange, but what can I do with this? So I just acknowledged it, and I kept talking. About 5 minutes go by, and people start pointing at the TV. And I look, it's on, like, I want to say the Netflix homepage. It's just scrolling. Oh, and I did not mention the remote. I could see it the entire time. It was sitting on a ledge. No one had any access to it. And now this TV is just scrolling through Netflix. I really wanted it to land on like a ghost movie. Of course, it did not. It just kind of went back to a blank screen eventually.
It's Dusty sitting there going, damn it, where's Smokey and the Bandit?
It's like, they don't have Bonanza. Where is it? But yeah, I have zero explanation for why it would do that. I have never seen the TV do that before. The only other experience I've had in that room was one night I was sitting at the opposite end because they used to have an armchair where I could like perfectly sit and be in the middle of everyone. And the lights in that room will sometimes flicker if they are on a dimmer switch. It's nothing spooky. That's just kind of how they are. So this one night, it was Friday the 13th, which I think kind of ramped things up a little bit. They have the lights so dim that they are just, strobing. I'm almost like worried it's going to trigger something in someone. I'm like, can we chill with the lights? So of course somebody goes, oh, haha, is that Dusty messing with us? So I explain about the dimmer switch. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you something's a ghost if I don't think it is, blah, blah, blah. As soon as I'm done talking, there's 8 round lights in the ceiling. that just go consecutively back. The 4 above me shut off. The other 4 in that room, they were on. The TV was actually on that night, was supposed to be on. The radio in the hotel was on. Everything else was on. But kind of like with the TV situation, I'm like, okay, what can I do with this? Like, I just kind of have to accept that these lights are off, acknowledge it, and just keep on going here. So I finish up telling the Dunhill story, and Charlotte is not a city that you can take your drinks with you, so we have to sit until everybody's done. So we're just kind of hanging out and just sort of making a joke. Somebody in the group, they go, okay, Dusty, turn the lights back on. The second she said it, they snapped perfectly back on, just right on cue. Like, my jaw dropped. I was like, that did not happen. Because this was a few years ago. This was the first time I ever really saw something on the tour. I was like, this just happened in here. Oh my goodness. And I've tried to debunk it. There's no light switch in that room. The light controls are behind the bar. It was not the bartender. So those are my kind of 2 big Dusty encounters were in that room there.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. But before we get into this break, if you might be interested in joining a growing community of like-minded individuals, then pop on over to the Open Minds Media Telegram, a place to discuss high strangeness, conspiracies, and anything else on your mind. Bizarre and open-minded individuals always welcome. Link to join available down in the show description. And we are back, so let's get back to it. If anything ever happens with that TV again, I've had a couple people come on the show that have said they've had some paranormal experiences in their house where whoever's on the other side, they'll start typing stuff out on like the search. So next, if that ever happens again and you see where the remote's at, you should just put it on the search and just leave it alone. See if it starts typing something out, because there might be something weird with that. Because I've had at least like 2 or 3 people that have talked about that phenomenon on the show before.
Oh, that's so creepy. I might just set it up that way to begin with and see if anything happens.
Yeah, just walk in, set it to the word thing. Because I mean, that's you can essentially just use that as a spirit box at that point.
Yes. Yeah. That I might do that. That's pretty cool. But I would be so creeped out if I'm just trying to search for something on my TV here and it just
starts spelling your name.
Yeah, I'm like, no.
Or it says Dusty was here.
If it was him, I'd be like, okay. I feel like I'm cool with him. I'm used to him at this point.
So
that would be cool.
Is there any other locations in Charlotte that you'd like to get into?
Yes. So one of our other bars, I don't have many stories from this place just because it's your typical kind of dive bar. It's loud. It's always crowded. But we were needing a new location, and I've always kind of liked this bar, and I would use it as a backup if I ever needed one. So I just randomly went in there one day, and I was like, hey, you guys are going to think this is a really strange question, but do you have any paranormal activity in this bar here? And the one guy, his name's Sean, he was like, yeah, we do. And I'm like, thank you. Perfect, because I really needed that. So they call their ghost Nellie. Not sure why. I think it's because this is an Irish bar. Most of the guys who work there are Irish. They're from Ireland. So I think they just wanted to give her an Irish name to kind of fit the theme.
Just drop the O part.
Yeah.
Oh, Nelly.
They probably say that when she's making mischief. She's like, oh, Nelly.
Oh, Nelly.
But yeah, not sure where she came from. I do know this bar was part of a hotel back in the 1800s, like late 1800s. The whole block it sits on made up that hotel, and then everything has just been sectioned off. Yeah, hi Gomez. He wanted to join in. So I'm not sure if she is somebody that was like a hotel patron. A lot of fires have happened in Charlotte just throughout the year, so she could be anyone. We really don't know. But Sean's story is, and I wish I had the video footage to kind of go with this. The bar is closed one night. He's in the itty bitty office that leads right to the bar itself. He comes out and he has to stop short because there are 2 beer glasses sitting on the floor, like on the rug behind the bar. So he kind of thinks he's being pranked. Like, he said he was a skeptic up until this point. So he's like, haha, guys. He's looking around. He goes, okay, the security camera points directly at this spot. I'm just going to go watch the footage. I'm going to go see who pranked me. So he goes back in the office. He pulls it up. And he says he kind of just like froze to the spot because he can see the beer glasses like on the counter where they normally leave them. Then just eventually they got picked up by absolutely nothing and just gently floated down to exactly where he found them. And he has been a believer from that point on.
The gently floating down makes it that much creepier.
Yeah. Other bartenders there, they have similar stories. One of the other guys said, this was actually while the bar was open, which is rare for something to happen then. He is, just doing his thing. He's serving people and he hears a bang behind him. So he looks, the mini fridge door has kind of like flung open and now there's one beer glass sitting on the floor. And I'm like, Nellie is just trying to tell you guys that she wants a drink. Like, she's like, I'm in an Irish bar for eternity. Will somebody pour me a Guinness, pretty please?
Just not one of them green ones. I don't want none of that nasty St. Patrick's Day shit.
No. But yeah, she makes footsteps upstairs. They say they hear dragging sounds. They think she's rearranging the furniture up there, but they go up to check it out and nothing is ever out of place. So, like, that's creepy. Like, what's she dragging around up there?
She changed her mind. She moved it and she's like, nope, that doesn't look right. Not feng shui.
They were right in the first place. I'm just going to put it back.
I'm just going to put it right back.
But yeah, one time when I was there, because I've never really experienced anything there except for this, it was a slow night because it was really rainy. Like, that bar is usually crowded, but there was almost no one in there. So I'm just sitting at a table waiting for my people to order. And the front door, it swings either way. It's just on hinges that go in or out. So if somebody comes in, it'll swing a few times. I'm like, whatever. No one came in. No one came out. I watched the door swing outwards against the wind and just like come back. And I was staring at it and I was like, please let someone have seen that. And I turned around and 3 people from the tour were like wide-eyed, just staring at the door. I was like, witnesses, thank you. But yeah, it's a very cool spot. I like it there a lot. Nelly or no Nelly, it's fun to drink there.
Hey, I mean, maybe if you sat down one day, you put a little drink at the end of the bar, maybe you can, make some kind of weird connection with her. I mean, just the drink slightly move over a little bit or something.
I've had people on the tour try that. And I tried to discourage them because I'm like, you're wasting your money. It's probably not going to happen. She tends to misbehave when the bar is closed. But then I'm like, why am I discouraging these people? Because I will usually then be given the not drunk ghost beer. So I'm like, I should just let them do that. And then I get a free drink out of it.
Yeah, let's say free beer out of it. Or even all else fails, they can end up drinking it. So you're still making more money for the bar, too. Exactly.
I'm like, I'm just going to let people do that.
They just got to find the proper drink. That's the trick. She doesn't want a beer, Maybe she just wants a good old shot of whiskey or something,
Maybe she's like, I'm not even Irish. Why have they called me Nelly? I want a cosmopolitan.
Just give me a wine. Just give her a nice wine. Give her a red, sweet wine.
Yeah. But yeah, that's always a fun spot. And then, we have the cemetery, typical cemetery things happen there. Gray lady, ghost children, just, your whole plethora of regular ghosts kind of make up the rest of the tour.
Is there any other ones that really, really stick out to you that you want to talk about before we start wrapping up?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the one we don't go to anymore.
I was hoping you'd bring that one up.
Place called Ryley. And if you look up haunted places of Charlotte, that's usually number 1. We don't go there anymore simply because it's a restaurant and they always.
Is this the one you were talking about in the beginning?
Yes.
Okay.
They always wanted us to get a table and it would add literally an hour onto the tour. And there was a point where we were like, we just can't do this anymore, and it started to feel like they didn't really want us there. That could have been the fault.
You all have to buy a meal in order to sit here and tell a ghost story.
yeah, that's definitely the vibe we were getting, that like we just were not welcome.
People are already coming in and buying drinks. I don't know why they're mad anyways. That's where the tips come from. You know, it's the people that are at the bar. And if they're one of the last stops on the bar, like there's a good chance you might get a $20 tip for one drink. I mean,
yeah, just weird vibes with the place, which is like, can I blame these people, or is the influence there just sort of rancid? So it's a weird spot. I don't know if I even recommend people who live in Charlotte to go check it out, not because of the demons, but because it was like number 3 on the worst health list of restaurants in the city. And again, I'm like, is that their fault? Or is this place just straight up cursed? So like more ghosts than you can imagine just are jam-packed into this restaurant. They have little kids. They have a girl who has written the ABCs on the wall in chalk, and no matter what they do, it does not go away. They can paint over it. It will find a way to come back. And they also hear her singing the ABCs in their upstairs bar area.
she really wants to leave her mark. She doesn't want to be covered up. She doesn't want to become part of the torn down history of Charlotte.
Yeah, she's like, I'm here. I love the alphabet. You're going to let me do my thing.
Acknowledge me.
Yes. So I like to say she's one of the sweet kids, one of the ones that messes with the TV. He is a sweet kid. And then they have a little turd who, like literally, because he hangs out in the women's bathroom and he likes to trap women in the bathroom, which is something I think has happened to me. I always like to preface that their doors are super sticky. Like they're just not built well. You do have to give a good shove to get out. But this one night I like experienced what all these people were talking about. I was like shoving, really putting my shoulder into it. It was unlocked. It wouldn't budge. And I knew these stories, so I said, hey, kid, let me out. Door opens. I said, all right, thank you.
You just got to ask nicely.
I did not think that would work because he is known to keep women in there until the light sensor is not like picking up on you moving anymore. So the lights will shut off on you and you are just trapped in this bathroom with this ghost child. But Mac Daddy here is the demon that lives in the upstairs. Surprisingly, he doesn't inhabit the basement. He is an upstairs demon. And the reason we kind of know...
Uptown demon, uptown, upstairs?
Yeah. He's just looking for an uptown girl, He wants Billy Joel to come
Just
through.
living in his uptown world.
But the reason we kind of know so much about him is one of the hostesses who doesn't work there anymore. She was a psychic medium. She said she could see these things. So this was kind of like her first-hand encounter. For a while, like we don't know where he came from, why he's up there, but for a while she was having like weird feelings about the bar. And then there was this one night where she had to go clean the upstairs and she's feeling super uncomfortable. She's in this little creepy hallway that leads to their upstairs bathrooms. And for whatever reason, she's just getting the feeling, hey, I need to look up. So she does, and she's right under the ceiling vent. In the vent, she sees like a quarter of a face. She sees like eyes and a nose. Bright yellow eyes. She said the skin kind of looked charred, like almost like Freddy Krueger, So, of course, she screams. She runs downstairs. She is freaking out. The one manager does not believe in any of this, even though she's like, I see this with my eyes. Like, I'm looking at a ghost right now. This place is haunted. That thing upstairs is not a ghost. I want it out of here. Will you let me sage the place? This manager is like, no, we've had a lot of fires in this building. You're not burning anything. He goes, I'm going to go finish what you were doing upstairs. Like, chill out. It's fine. He goes upstairs.
I'm just going to make a baked Alaska. It's not sage. Just don't acknowledge the sage smell. It's just a baked Alaska.
It's like, I'm just going to like turn on the oven while you're
I'm trying to bring some class to this restaurant.
So he gets up there and he gets shoved into a wall by nothing that he can see. Like, hands firmly push him. He stumbles. So he kind of gathers himself a little bit. He walks downstairs. Okay, go ahead, sage the place. So she did, and that actually worked until she left the restaurant, until she was no longer working there. Then it came back. And the people who work there to this day, they are super freaked out about the upstairs. They do not want to go up there. Some of them flat out just refuse. Most of them, if they do go up, they go with a buddy. There was one time I was upstairs there, and TMI, but I really had to go to the bathroom. And I'm looking down that hallway, which is where she saw the face. And I'm like, no, I just can't do it. I'd been down that hallway a million times, but this one night I was just like, no.
You got to trust your gut feeling. If something's telling you not to do it, like, it's probably not the night.
Exactly. I was like, no, I'm not. Never mind. Not doing it. And there was another time I was up there, I was talking, and I just felt like something had like a vice grip on my temples. Very strange. I just kind of ignored it as I was telling the story, but I was getting kind of dizzy. I was like, I don't want these people to think I'm like hamming it up. I don't want them to think I'm being like the dude from Ghost Adventures. Like, oh God, it's touching me.
Scratched me. 3 marks.
I just kind of like powered through, but I'm like, I feel it squeezing my head. So yeah, very creepy. So I don't like to blame the restaurant for the fact that it has bad health marks and bad.
I mean, even on the other side, if this thing pushes people, even if they act like they don't believe in it, maybe they just don't want to be liable if somebody gets like pushed down the stairs, because I know it's going to end up coming back on them. So it's like, if the employees acknowledge the fact that this place is haunted, you know, if they're a restaurant that's not doing that great, I mean, that's definitely a way to make money, is people just coming there to check out the fact that it's haunted. But again, if you got something that's pushing people, I mean, you know, they may just not want to be liable, because how are you going to explain that in court? You know, if somebody goes and tries to sue you of, we got fucking demons up here and they push people, like, they'd be like, no, but for real though, like, you don't have the proper safety protocols. Like, you ain't got like anything to make it so people don't slip on the stairs. Like, it's just going to end up flipping on them. So they just don't want to take the chance.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that for sure.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show, so let's hop right in.
But yeah, that place it's interesting. You can definitely, I don't always feel something on the main floor, but anytime there is a definite shift as you head upstairs, it just feels so much different. It's weird.
I almost find it kind of strange too that it's upstairs, because usually it's like the weird activity ends up being like in the basement level. So it's almost interesting that it's flipped at this place.
Yeah, that's just nothing about that place makes sense.
It's all inverted.
Yeah. But yeah, speaking of like the big ghost hunting shows, I can't believe no one has been there before, because it's just, you can make a really good episode out of that place.
Maybe they don't have access, or it's just one of those things that it's just more of like a local legend type thing where like a lot of the locals know about it, but it may not be one of those things that people really know about outside of Charlotte, you know?
Yeah, that could be it for sure.
Because I don't think when Spooky CLT, when he came on, I don't think that he actually got into that one at all. So that one's a new one that he hasn't actually brought up. So yeah, it might be one of those things that it's just, it kind of resonates with the locals, but not many people know it outside of there.
Yeah, that could be. Makes sense. Maybe they want it that way.
Hey, that's always how you end up preserving these places, though, because once too many people start coming, it becomes like a tourist spot. I feel like you lose some of it, because there's a lot of these places that are haunted, and they end up turning into these places where it's almost like, you know, you can go every single night and get a ghost tour. Like, I feel like it just ends up pushing out whatever ends up being there. And even just like the people coming in for the tour, once you've turned it into like a business like that, unless you have people that you honestly trust are there for the honest research, it's like you never know if people are setting up like little speakers somewhere or little things that blow air somewhere. So it also kind of takes away like the real spookiness to it, because then you just question whether or not, you know, one of the people that's involved in setting this place up might actually also work at a haunted house and he knows how to do these types of things.
Yeah. And that is like my biggest pet peeve ever. Like, don't fake things. If you really try, there's legit stuff out there. Yeah.
Like there's a couple of them in Michigan that were some pretty big paranormal spots that are like bucket lists to be able to go and do an honest investigation at, but they've turned them into those places where it's like every single night, all day long, like they're doing tours. So it's just like, you know, you can pay to get a tour, but it's like, I don't trust it. You know, even if you pay to go and do an actual paranormal investigation there and they just kind of give you the keys for a couple hours, like they're again, trying to bring tourist money back in. So even if they're not there, it doesn't mean that they might not have stuff set up that, you know, it'll creep you out so that you'll get some content and then you'll bring more people back in. It's just once money gets involved, it starts getting weird. Unless it's one of those places that, you know, basically just there to try to conserve the building where they'll let paranormal tours come in and everything, but they're not like trying to turn it into an amusement park. It's rather they're just trying to restore the building to maybe what it previously looked like for the sake of people being able to come in and do paranormal investigations. Because there's a few of those that I've been to in like Indiana and Ohio and stuff that they're still almost like in the original condition. And they basically just let people paranormal investigate just to be able to put enough money in to make sure the building is like safe enough and structurally sound enough for people to be able to come into it. But they're not turning it into this just reoccurring revolving door of paranormal tours. You know, it's mainly just ghost teams will come in and they'll say, here's the keys, see you in the morning, versus like, here's this, you know?
Yeah, it's so much better, especially when it is going to like the preservation of these places, because like I said, here in Charlotte, like we really don't get a lot of that stuff. A lot of it's just bulldozed down. So I'm all for doing what we can to save these historic buildings.
You got to go get that historical plaque on them, because once it gets that, then you can't do nothing about it. So the more buildings that you can get that plaque on, and just keep it maintained enough that it doesn't become, you know, like an issue with, you know, somebody possibly getting hurt, then you're good. Like you're locked in at that point, because the only excuse that they have for a historical building is once it gets to the point where it's like you can't even enter the building without it possibly collapsing, and then they'll just tear it down. But you got to recycle that money and just get that plaque on it, and then you'll be good.
Yes.
But kind of starting to wrap up towards the end, I always like to do words of wisdom from the guests to the listeners. So if there's any words of wisdom that you could bestow on the listeners, what might it be?
Always be kind. Number one thing. And always keep your mind open, because you never know when something spooky is going to happen to you.
Ain't that the
sounds
truth?
Ominous.
I'm always telling people you got to be open-minded and a skeptic at the same time, because it's like you have to root out anything that could be, you know, just like a bump or a pipe or this or that. But once you end up with a spot where you can't explain it by any other means, then you know you got something. So it's like be open-minded, not to the point where every single bump in the night is something, but also don't be enough of a skeptic where you're just trying to make explanations for something that clearly are not there. You got to be in the middle ground of both.
Yes, just be discerning, but be open to it.
Exactly. Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break. But if you guys enjoy the show and think I deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you. Now back with that deep conversation you crave. And if anybody wanted to possibly get a hold of you to, you know, share some local stories, possibly go on your tour, or, you know, even if they have some other stories for different places that you might be able to talk about on your tour, where might people be at a hold of you, and where can people find out where to get a tour from?
So if you want to go on the tour, go to nightlyspirits.com. Very, very simple. If you want to get a hold of me, I can plug TikTok again.
That was literally overnight.
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing ever. I'm at its_Haley Addams. Haley Addams, all one word, 2 Ds. That is where you can find me. You can DM me. I'm on Instagram under the same name there. And now I'm on Blue Sky, and that's just Haley Addams with no its or underscore. Oh, I'm on YouTube as well. It's Haley Addams.
Quick and easy to find. And I'll make sure I include all those links so everybody can find them quick and easy. And I appreciate you making the time to come on today. Really glad that we got connected through, you know, the previous guest from Charlotte. And hopefully we can dive into some more stuff in the future, because I'm sure that these tours are always changing. You're checking out new locations. So, you know, I'm sure at some point soon you'll probably have some more experiences or a new location you're diving into. And I'd love to have you come back on and talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. That would be great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It was a great conversation. I love diving into people's local history of stuff, because if it wasn't for getting that opportunity to do that, like, some of these stories might eventually die out. So you got to try to spread them nationally and not just, where people maybe locally are coming to experience them, because then you're also drawing people in to kind of keep these stories alive too. Yes,
for sure. For sure. I'm all about that. Keeping the ghosts alive.
Exactly. Or unalive.
Yes.
If you guys really enjoyed today's episode and you guys want to show some love, don't forget to go and smash that follow icon on whatever listening platform you're listening to this on. And you guys can also share this episode or the whole show with a friend through word of mouth. Awesome way to help the show grow, and anything you guys do, I absolutely appreciate. And if you guys don't mind leaving a rating or review for the show on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys happen to find it, preferably iTunes, if you guys don't mind typing out a review, because it's been a hot minute since we've gotten one of those on the show, it would absolutely mean the world to me. And of course, it'll help me fight this algorithm battle after the recent issue with apparently misinformation because I stated a fact on YouTube, but hey, it is what it is. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones I'm the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which is available on the Linktree. Or you guys can even call into the hotline number or text that number, whatever's easier for you guys. And that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys have some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends in the community, IKNOWSQUATCH, Snugly All Natural Products, who was also a recent guest on the show, Cryptoteeology, and Big Ape Threads, and our other friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available. More information on those, of course, is available down in the show notes. And every single thing that I mentioned throughout the show is all available on the Linktree, which again is available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. I hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities,